Louis Post-Dispatch reporter in studio. Told you I like print people. He joins us now. Hi, David. How are you?
Hi. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, yeah, you don't want to ever cross my wife. Let me just tell you.
I'll
right
keep my
now.
eyes peeled.
Yeah, the election guy in St. Charles is really going to be like, wow, what just happened to me here? So good luck to him. So your scribing's very interesting as we follow the after effects of Anonymous. And Anonymous, the group that we heard about shortly after things in Ferguson hit the fan, and this was an entity out there, a cyber entity, bad guy, that honestly we hear about once in a while when big stories come out, and it was the masked voicemail, or I don't know if it was put online, do not cross us, do not.
That is kind of what they sound like on their YouTube messages.
Yeah, it was totally creepy. I mean, what are they going to do? And then we didn't hear any more about it. But actually, all the while, there has been much fallout from things they have done, like not only revealing identities of city officials, police officers, mayors, but people related to them, people that know them, and the things that have happened subsequently have not been getting the press until now.
Yeah, so it's a good point. Anonymous has been around for 10 years at least, but social media, Twitter, maybe more than anything, has allowed just an incredible explosion in the way they work, the way they communicate. Protesters in Ferguson love them because they help with communication, talking about kind of who's where and what's going on. The big thing that one of the big things Anonymous does is they kind of out people. So if you're the police chief and they don't like you, they're going to go find all your personal information, everything they can find online, often via legal sources like real estate records and court records, and they're going to put it all together, and they're going to put a profile of you on one of their paste bin pages, which is kind of this text website that you can just dump stuff on.
Well, when you say you kind of think of Anonymous as an organization, but its very structure is very non-structured.
Right. So ops are run by somebody who cares a lot, and they start these operations, right? But then people jump in from all over the country, all over the world. So Anonymous has hackers, and I say hackers loosely. It couldn't be a 13-year-old kid. It can be a 25-year-old in his parents' basement. It can be a doctor. I mean, there's all kinds of people who do this work. They all jump in at their various levels. This can literally mean just looking online for more information on John Carney. It can also mean actually breaking into a U.S. government server. That happens very rarely. There's only a few people who can actually do that. But these guys, they harness the power of the internet all over the world, and people jump in and they find this information and they put it online. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. And frankly, they don't care. Right. And David Hunn is with us from the Post-Dispatch and writing about just things. And you had just mentioned sometimes they're wrong. Yeah. One of the things that came up that was one of the first big glaring mistakes was the identity of the police officer that shot Michael Brown wrongly. Yep. So what came of that? And was this an anonymous thing? And what happened to that guy? John, there wasn't just one incorrect outing of the police officer. As far as I can tell, there were 4. It happened over and over again. And by the way, I should add that there is no collective opinion on even within Anonymous. So like I just said, they didn't care. Well, some don't care. Some feel like the pressure on anyone is good. It gets their point out. Right. Some care. Some get very angry when incorrect things happen. So there was a dispatcher in St. Anne who was outed early on, and he went into hiding for 2 weeks. They put a police car outside of his house. I mean, he got death threats to the point where he had to take down all his social media pages. But why? He was the dispatcher. So yeah, he wasn't even in Ferguson. He said he had never been to Ferguson. So why was he selected? Was there any explanation as to why this guy's stuff was thrown out there? So there are some very interesting stories on that point. I didn't do them. One of them's in the New Yorker, September 5th. Look it up. You could take credit. I wouldn't know. And they analyze what happened. How did it go wrong? And it's interesting. Anonymous, like I said, they don't always like each other. So somebody actually posted a transcript of how these decisions were made. And it's basically a bunch of guys or gals getting into a chat room anonymously and talking about who they think did it. And they present evidence sometimes, but one of the guys in the chat room said, like, I just think this is him. I think we should put it out there. It seemed to have no logic.
What else has happened? Because I know with identity theft, most people listening have probably experienced it on some level. But what has it meant? Have we had people had to relocate? You talked about somebody taking their social media down, but ruined lives? Could we go that far?
In some cases. I mean, listen, ruined lives is tough. Ruined periods of lives, absolutely. So for instance, one of the Ferguson officers who worked for one of the guys I quoted, he had one of his officers was outed at first. The guy left the state. He's gone.
He was outed as the guy that shot Michael Brown.
Right. The chief, the St. Louis County Chief of Police, John Belmar, his wife spent hours every day for weeks just trying to undo all the credit applications, all the, they would change phone numbers and addresses. They'd put out credit applications every day, multiple credit applications to start credit cards, buy houses, buy cars.
Let's point out this was not actually them doing this, but with the information out there, opportunists taking advantage of this and applying for the credit cards.
So that's a tough spot to say. We don't know. They won't say they didn't do it. They just won't say they did do it either. When they put the information out there, they feel like they're putting in, from their perspective, they feel like they're putting intense pressure on those public officials. And they want everyone to use that information as much as they can to continue that pressure on those public officials.
We're seeing more and more departments building cybercrime divisions where they're handling things that we didn't know 10, 15 years ago. So is there any accountability here for them?
You bring up a great point. It's so I talked to the AG's office here in Missouri. It's so difficult to prosecute these kinds of crimes. First off, sometimes, so going and finding where you live from county real estate records and putting it online isn't illegal. There's nothing wrong with that. Right. I mean, maybe there's something wrong with it, but it's not illegal. It could be unethical. You can say a lot about it, but there's no crime right now that says this is wrong. Now, the guy who takes that information and comes to your house and sits in front of your house and won't leave, that maybe is a crime, right? That could be harassment. The person who tries to break into your bank account, that's clearly a crime. But the guy who just posts it,
well, I know there were pictures that were put up of the police chief's family, including his children.
Yeah.
Even though it's not pornographic in nature, somebody else putting up pictures of my children certainly should be.
It's crazy spooky. I mean, some of the pictures are like, his son, lounging on a couch. It's like, how did you even get that picture? Now, really, what happened was they got it off social media and posted it. But what it looks like is they took a picture from the window. Yeah, it's spooky, super spooky.
Well, David Hunn with us from the Post-Dispatch, a reporter covering the aftermath, I guess we call it, of what's going on with Anonymous. So what about you? You've become one of the voice in covering what's going on here. Has anyone in Anonymous reached out to you and said either, keep up, David, we'd like you to keep writing about us?
So let me just say that my wife was not thrilled, nor was any of my family happy that I'm covering this stuff.
Right.
We had talks about that at the Post, like what to do. But the Anonymous actually has come out several times and said we do not go after media. I think they want us to be printing this stuff.
Do we know who's at the head of this?
Yeah, so there is one guy. Okay, first off, it's really hard to know who's telling the truth, who's making stuff up, whatever. They won't submit to any phone interview. There's a guy who runs Operation Ferguson, and he does respond to emails. So I have been able to talk to him via email. He gets so angry when I just suggest a phone conversation or like any kind of personal information, even things I don't mean to say. He gets so upset. So it's actually strange, very prickly, very prickly.
And how it started and how it came to Ferguson, when there are injustices all over the planet, how did they determine to hone in on our particular issues? Obviously, Ferguson later became of global interest, but Anonymous was in there before that point.
So they say that local activists called them, and they specifically single out Tef Poe, the local activist and rapper, as somebody who made a call for international help.
You say that like I know who a local rapper is, but thank you for thinking I'm so hip. I have no idea what you're talking about.
So Tef Poe is a born and raised in Delwood a local rapper and activist. He was there in Ferguson and put out a call on Twitter saying, help. We need international and national help. And Anonymous responded. Now, Tefpo's attorney called and said, he didn't mean to call Anonymous. I'm not sure what's true and what's not, but I know that Anonymous says they responded to Tefpo. So, and I think others too, but he was the main contact for them at the start.
Do we know who the main anonymous person is globally, or no?
There's no such thing. Close. There's no such thing.
There's not anyone driving the bus at all.
There are multiple people driving the bus. I once said, hey, you're leaderless. Like, how does this work? And again, the guy got really mad at me. Like, no, we're not leaderless. We have lots of charismatic leaders. You're talking to one of them. So I think I stepped in his toes accidentally. But they do seem to have leadership.
Who throws your Christmas parties? There's another way to hone in on it, possibly.
I'm not sure they have a lot of Christmas parties. I mean,
it's scary because the cyber threat at one time really meant nothing. Somebody went online and said something nasty about somebody, and that was the end of it. Then we get cyberbullying, and a couple of kids go on to commit suicide. Now we have global police vigilante justice organizations, and it's kind of terrifying, especially when you can't find someone to hold accountable for it.
Well, and what's interesting is I'm wondering what the consequences will be down the line. So journalists do some of the same work. Like, our job is to find people and understand their history. Sometimes when it's public officials, the history they don't want to tell us. So we dig into public records. We dig into, well, what's going to happen when everybody starts hiding their public records? Journalists are going to this is going to come back and hurt us eventually.
But, if you get it wrong, you're called out for it.
We don't get it wrong. We can't get it wrong. And you're right. If we do, we have to put a correction in the paper as soon as possible.
The fact that these guys have no accountability on this is kind of terrifying.
I must say the irony is striking. This is an anonymous computer guys from across the world outing someone who wants to remain anonymous. So it's people who won't name themselves naming other people.
Where does the story go from here?
Anonymous isn't going away. They are feared, kind of across the country in public halls, the officials. I think that we're going to start seeing people really ratchet down security. I think we're going to start seeing officials hide their presences.
But they can't, like the real estate records, they can't hide that. Maybe they're going to take down their
social
medias.
Oh, yeah, they can. They'll start an LLC. They'll have a lawyer start the LLC. They'll buy the home in the name of the LLC.
Because we're probably, most certainly, this is going to ramp up when we find out what's going to happen with the officer. Everybody is planning for the worst.
So Anonymous is calling for a nationwide protest.
Who's left out? Who's left to ruin? I didn't realize they had been this busy. But so when this ruling comes down, whether there's going to be prosecution against the officer or there are going to be no charges, who's Anonymous have left to go after?
That is a good question. I think they'll do some of the same. It's interesting. The story really talks the most about the mayor's parents. So the mayor of Ferguson, James Knowles, his parents were targeted at the beginning. What's interesting is Knowles really wasn't. It's unclear if they just decided that his parents were more effective as a target, or if they didn't realize right away. They did though. They said it on Twitter that they knew they got the wrong people and they were trying to fix it. So they can. There are still people to go after.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, and much of it not told, David, until you put. I was going to say. Pen to paper, but that's not really how you guys do it anymore.
Fingers to keyboard.
St. Louis Post-Dispatch reporter David Hunn. How can we follow you? I assume you also tweet as well?
I'm on Twitter. So it's just my full name at David Hunn.
And if we want to get your personal information and put it out there?
I'll tell you this. I am the easiest guy on the planet to reach. So my stuff is everywhere. All you have to do is look me up and you'll get my cell phone and my work phone. I don't have a home phone, so I'm no good there anyway.
Yeah, and much to my wife's chagrin, I'm pretty transparent as well, which is also why I'm never going to run for public office. Enjoy your work, David. I hope we can talk again.
Yeah, thanks so much, John.
Thanks
Good
so
to
much.
be here.
7:26, John Carney in for McGraw. He returns to the fold on Thursday, and I think the general consensus has been Paul Harris will be in for the next couple of days doing the morning show. We'll return to our broadcast starting tomorrow, and good shows this week.